Welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. In preparation for the new edition of Horus Heresy, Warhammer Community are going legion by legion, teasing us with rule snippets from the upcoming release. Today, we'll be looking at the 10th Legion, the Iron Hands. Just a quick note before we get into it. As we're a new channel, a subscribe and a like really helps us reach a bigger audience. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit those buttons down below. Now the Iron Hands. They're another one of those loyalist armies that I just find a bit meh, a bit boring. In the end, they're kind of a bunch of sad guys that just sit around with a fetish for robots. I need some passion in my legions. I need them to get fueled with rage, and that to be expressed in creative and interesting ways. And they're just a bit dour, I find, in the novels that I've read with them in it. Also, their impact on the Heresy is cut quite short with the literal decapitation of their Primarch and their absolute brutalization on Isfahan. And I can see this having an appeal of their own. So the idea of I love the Black Shields idea, and Iron Hands, obviously, I keep going to say Iron Warriors. Iron Hands fit perfectly into that idea. And there are some cool parts to them, I will admit. I do really like both the idea and the aesthetics of Cyborg Space Marines. I think that's pretty cool. I like their whole cog thing that they've got going for them. They love chains. Look, I'm into all that kind of stuff. So I like the aesthetics. And I have indeed used some of the Iron Hands Mark III lads that you can get on Forge World. I've used some of those for my Iron Warriors as well, for one of the tactical squads, just because it looks so cool. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that have done the same thing. So I wasn't overly excited for the Iron Hands, but here they are. And look, I'm going to be honest, their rules are strong. So if strong rules is what you're into, then you should be excited about the Iron Hands. So let's have a quick look at it. So their army-wide special rule is called the Medusas Scales. Medusas Scales. It reads, all shooting attacks made against a model with this special rule that does not have the vehicle unit type suffers a modifier of -1 to the strength of the attack. Models with this special rule and the vehicle unit type instead gain it will not die 6+ special rule, or if such a model already has a variant, it essentially goes up by +1. So if they already had it on a 6+, it now goes to a 5+. I'm not going to read all that out because it's just so much text. Let's get into this. So this is quite similar to what they had in first edition, but better. It's better for a few reasons. Firstly, that -1 strength applies now to dreadnoughts. It applies to Landspeeders. And secondly, why it's a little bit better, is that vehicles now gain it will not die just natively. They've got it without having to pay points. Previously, it cost points, I believe 10 points per vehicle if you wanted to give that to them, and that can get pretty pricey over an army that probably wants to have a lot of vehicles in it, depending on which rite of war you go with. So let's dive into why this is so good. So regular Marines, it means from bolters, and we're going to see a lot of bolters in this game, especially if Imperial Fists become quite popular. So from bolters, it means they're wounding you on 5+ instead of 4+. It's a big difference. It makes a difference, but that's not the best benefit they get from this. So it starts getting really good when you start talking about instant death. So it negates instant death for a lot of weapons and for a lot of different miniatures. Obviously, toughness 4, instant deathing with strength 8. Missile launchers being the big one out there, and there's plenty of missile launchers flying around with various popular armies. And what we're seeing in the new edition is more miniatures with multi-wounds. Terminators being a great example here. Elite infantry, jet bikes, all these things now have multiple wounds. Even Landspeeders, which are now actually, if the playtest rules continue, counted as cavalry with a few wounds instead of those light armored vehicles that they used to be. So just going back. So the Terminators in particular love this rule. It makes them extra tough. It means that an enemy needs to focus on them with strength 9 weaponry to start getting those instant deaths on them to negate that whole 2 wound idea. And at that point, when you're shooting at Terminators with strength 9 weaponry, if this army has some tanks in it, it means that the anti-tank weaponry focus towards your infantry. You're smiling all day long. That's a plus just from the get-go. It's especially powerful for jet bikes. So with the new rules that have been leaked for jet bikes, and once again, these may continue into the final rules or they may not, we're looking at a toughness 4 model with a 3+ save. Ugh, not great. It does have 2 wounds though, which is fantastic, right? 2 wounds, really positive. The toughness 4 with 3+, not so much. Now, Iron Hands jet bikes, so they essentially go up to toughness 5 for various reasons, but it means that missile launchers are going to be beautiful for taking out jet bikes for everybody that isn't the Iron Hands. Iron Hand jet bikes, super strong, which isn't overly fluffy. The Iron Hands don't love the idea of flying jet bikes all around the place, but they're going to be probably the best army to run them, which is hilarious. Hopefully the White Scars get a few other things for them, which make them the best jet bike armies, but we'll just have to wait and see. Moving on, Dreadnoughts. So this rule does indeed affect Dreadnoughts, not infect, kind of infects them. Dreadnoughts are going to be tough. Iron Hand Dreadnoughts are going to be even tougher. Contemptors essentially go up to toughness 8. Contemptor Dreadnoughts toughness 8. And unless I'm mistaken, Leviathans, playtest rules considered here, will essentially go up to toughness 9, which is just brutal and so good. So Iron Hands Dreadnoughts will be absolutely amazing. Very popular, I think. Lastly, here is Landspeeders. So in the playtest rules, Landspeeders are generally toughness 5 or toughness 6, depending on which flavor you take. And there's lots of weapons out there that are going to be really good at taking them down. Assault cannons, auto cannons, those kind of things. But once you start putting -1 strength on them, those Landspeeders start getting a lot tougher, especially because you're looking at kind of 3+ wounds for the various models of Landspeeders. Iron Hands Landspeeder meta? Maybe. You heard it here first if it becomes a thing. So I really like this rule. I think it's tough. I think it's narrative driven for the Iron Hands. It makes sense. It's a nice continuation on from first edition. It's not overly confusing in any way. Cleanly written, powerful rule, lots of positives about it. As per any negatives, maybe it's a bit too strong, certainly compared to some of the more mediocre rules we've seen so far. But look, it is what it is. So there is, of course, the second part of this rule after all that. Vehicles getting the It Will Not Die natively. That is each turn, I believe, and I could be wrong here, but each turn they get to roll a dice, and if they get that number in those brackets, in this case 6+, unless it goes up from whatever else, and there might be some Rite of Wars that interact with that, we'll wait and see. But if you roll that 6+, you get a hull point back. Great, it can come up sometimes. Will it be super powerful or overbearing? Not really. Often you're going to find with the way that Heresy units are built, if you're shooting at a vehicle, you're probably planning on taking it out. I personally am going to run some 10-man squads of las cannon toning Iron Warriors, so I don't think much is going to survive that, and certainly one extra hull point isn't going to save the day for that vehicle. But look, it'll come up, it'll be fun, it'll help you push towards a mechanized list if you're that way inclined, with Iron Hands, might be, depending on what Rite of Wars we get eventually. But at the moment, with these rules, they're certainly looking more like that elite infantry, strong and dreadnought strong kind of army. So the next rules we've got here are the Warlord Trait. It's called Silver Iron Will. It reads, a Warlord with this trait and all models in any unit he has joined are never affected by any special rules or effect that lowers a characteristic, including the Fear and Radphage as special rules, and due to losing an assault where the enemy has inflicted more wounds. That's really good. I'll go into that in a sec. In addition, an army whose Warlord has this trait may not make reactions during the movement phase, but may make an additional reaction in either one of the opposing player's shooting or assault phases. That's a bit restrictive, so we have seen with a lot of the Warlord traits so far that generally they give you, usually in the movement phase, but in other phases as well, just the ability to do an additional reaction. This is the first time we've seen in a Warlord trait that kind of restriction. Now, let's keep going, before I start analysing. The last part is, if the Warlord is removed as a casualty, then this additional reaction is lost, but the army may make reactions in the movement phase as normal. So if he gets killed, you can go back to doing movement phase reactions, which is nice. All right, so first part, let's rewind back. Not having to worry about fear is really nice. And it's any unit is joined. So look, it's only the unit he's joined. It is what it is. But not having to worry about fear for a key unit, and not having to worry about the shenanigans that in particular some Night Lords can come down and pin you and shoot you off the table with their fear-inducing crazy psychopaths. Really nice. Radphage, I mean, sure, great. That's nice as well. But the fear one I think is really important there. And more so, when you lose an assault, you don't have to worry about how many wounds you lost by. That's really important. It's going to be very helpful for making sure that you're not running away and not getting cut down when you do so. So I think it's a great Warlord trait. I would definitely stick this on a Warlord and shove them in the most expensive unit I have, because it's going to really protect it against some of the meta shenanigans I think we're going to see being pulled off on the table around that fear mechanic. The restriction, though, is pretty harsh. So the movement phase reactions that we're going to see for the most part is that when an enemy deep strikes down, if you're within a certain distance or you're doing certain things, and you can kit out units to do this better. I won't go into it now. We'll get there eventually. When they deep strike down or they come in from reserves, whatever they're doing, you get a chance to shoot at them, which is really good, and is going to be the counter to those deep striking armies that I was kind of just talking about with that Night Lords idea, where because deep striking is going to get really good, right? If they keep it the way it was in the playtesting, deep strike is going to be really good, and there's definitely going to be a lot of players that want to try and take advantage of that. So your counter is having those movement phase reactions available to you, and a lot of those Warlord traits giving you those extra movement phase reactions, super helpful for that hard counter. Look, maybe in a future meta you won't have to worry about it. In those one-off games where it does happen, you're going to be kicking yourself. You're going to be going, oh man, I wish I could really shoot at these guys right now. We'll wait and see which reactions end up being more popular. I have a feeling that reactions in the shooting and assault phases are going to be more popular than those you can do in the movement phases. That may be a brutally incorrect statement. I think it'll come down to what we see in the meta in regards to that deep striking piece, right? And for people that don't care about the meta, which is, of course, most people, myself included, really, it'll just come down to what kind of armies you're playing. So if you're not playing your mates, they don't have any particular armies that love to deep strike, and there's only a few armies that really want to do a lot of it, then you don't need to stress too much. So the restriction might be good, might be bad, depends what kind of environment you're playing in. That last piece there, where the Warlord gets removed as a casualty, getting the ability to do movement phase reactions back is nice. And it's nice that they've put that in just to remove any confusion around that. And that brings us to the end of our Heresy chats for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about these Iron Hand rules in the comments. I think they're pretty fantastic. They're certainly up there with giving the Imperial Fist a run for their money on the top tier that we've seen so far. Make sure to keep rolling those dice and getting hyped for Heresy.